We can start the recording now. Okay, so some general announcements here, some things that this community should know about. During the summer, the updated versions of the minimal interoperability mechanisms have been published. These correspond to the new structure that a MIM has to have, which is called YMIM. There are several presentations that we make about what the MIMs are, these minimal interoperability mechanisms, and also the structure they have to have currently. So feel free to check it out. The updated version is available on the Living in EU website, and you can go there to read up about this. The reason this is important in this context because it very much responds to or caters to the needs of a data space in the smart city domain. Regarding this specific webinar series, we already have had one webinar in early June, which was dedicated to the governance of data spaces. There we had several data spaces represented to see how the work regarding governance is going and what is it really in different domains, and so that we can compare it. This was also recorded, so if you're interested, my colleagues, if they haven't done it already, they will post this information in the chat. If you have any questions regarding anything, always feel free to email me. So, as I said, we are currently in the preparatory phase of the data space for smart and sustainable cities and communities, which means that our work during this past year was concentrated on creating a blueprint that has both non-technical and technical components to define an infrastructure that will help the efficient data sharing across the data space participants. This preparatory action, however, is coming to an end. We only had 1 year, and fingers crossed that it is coming to an end this month, because we have to also start the deployment. So it means that we're actually moving on to realizing what we've been working on for the past year. The deployment phase is then expected to start in October. When we say that this deployment phase is dedicated to the realization of this blueprint that we've been working on, it means that this deployment phase will call on cities and communities to form mini consortia and apply to become a site of piloting. 9 to 12 sites of piloting will be selected, so mini consortia. Where we will work together with, where the deployment consortium will work together with the mini consortia to actually realize the data space. If everything goes as expected, these calls should be out in January, and everyone will have a couple of months' time dedicated to apply. In case of questions, of course, feel free to reach out to us. A little bit about how to position the data space for smart and sustainable cities and communities in the actual ecosystem and ongoing projects of the European digital scene. So firstly, as I mentioned, there are different domain-specific data spaces that are all supported by the Data Spaces Support Center. If you are in any way familiar with the digital strategy of Europe, these have been described that there is a need to establish data spaces for each domain so that they can be actually adopted to specific use cases. And as such, we also, as a data space initiative, we belong to this network, and we also work closely together, mainly with the Data Space Support Center, but we also link to all the other data spaces. Then the DS4SSC is also a CSA of the Living in EU movement. So it means that much of the work that we do in the DS4SSC benefits or we bring it to the Living in EU movement. And one of those being that we are actually we took the MIMs, the minimal interoperability mechanisms that I mentioned earlier, to see how we can actually employ it in this context. And finally, this year, January, the Sitcom AI testing and experimentation facility was launched together with other domain-specific testing and experimentation facilities. And this testing and experimentation facility has the task to create an environment where AI-driven innovations can be tested, so that we can make sure that they correspond to the European vision and values and regulations, and it's safe for society. This project will also build on our data space blueprint. That said, we will arrive now to the actual purpose of this meeting, which will be that we will discuss the technical common grounds of data spaces. First, we will have Clara Pazuela from the Fireware Foundation, who will represent today the Data Space Support Center. She will tell us about what the Data Space Support Center understands as the technical blueprint of a data space. And then Timo Tuye, who is a technical advisor at OpenAGI Smart Cities, so us, will come in from the DS4SSC side and explain what are technical common grounds of data space in this specific domain. This will also allow us to reflect a little bit on how we can actually customize the blueprint, the technical blueprint of the DSSC to the specific domains. Please bear in mind that you are very welcome to post your questions in the chat or any other thoughts or comments, and we will have a dedicated Q&A session. So Clara, I think it's time for you to come and take the stage.
Thank you very much, Sophie, for the introduction. So I hope you can see my screen, and can you see my screen, or perhaps?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Now we cannot see your screen. Now it's stopped. The screen
I think now better.
It's loading. It's there, but it's not in slideshow yet. Now we can see the DSSC asset.
Okay. Okay, good. So yes, no, sorry. Yeah. Okay, so thank you very much for inviting the support center to this co-branded webinar with the data space for smart cities and communities. Today I'm here representing, as Sophie said, the support center. And the focus of the presentation today is to explain which technical elements, which technical items can facilitate the support center to the data spaces, in this case for smart cities and communities. So before going into the details, just to give an overview of the different assets that the support center is currently delivering to the different data spaces. So we have assets from different nature, but today I will concentrate only on the ones that are in relation to the technical grounds. So the main mission of the support center is to support and to provide the needed tools and mechanisms to the data spaces for starting, for deploying, and for scaling in the following months and years. So if we have a look at the asset model of this approach, you can see here how the different assets that will be delivered by the support center is relating each other. And today I'm going to concentrate on the ones that are in relation to the blueprint, because it's the assets that will be delivered in order to provide guidelines and mechanisms to the data spaces for building their own technical blueprints in the data spaces. So in this way, we have the mission, or we have put the blueprint at the core of the support center, as it's one of the main assets to be delivered to the data spaces, and we will provide additional support to the data spaces for using and deploying this blueprint. This blueprint has been created in cooperation with these data spaces. So I mean, we have been exchanging with them through different mechanisms that we'll be explaining during the presentation. The elaboration of this blueprint and the different elements that are within the blueprint. So let's go then into the details about this blueprint, what is inside, and how these elements can be used in your own data space. So in terms of composition, the blueprint is composed mainly by what we call building blocks. The building blocks are those functional elements that are essential to set up a data space, and they can be of different nature. So they can be technical, but they can be also for business purposes, for legal purposes. So we will see later on the proposed taxonomy of building blocks that the support center is providing. But just bear in mind that the main elements of this blueprint are these building blocks. These building blocks are described somehow from a functional point of view, and in the case of technical building blocks, the support center is also providing technical specifications. These technical specifications will be for sure rely on some standards, some specifications, and some existing reference implementations that are already there, and will be able also to identify potential gaps or missing elements that could be relevant for creating future standardization requests or future implementations. Apart from these building blocks that are these functional elements, these building blocks needs to be explained how to interact, how to relate each other, and how to work together. And there will be also some documentation about the integration of all these elements and how they work together. And two very important elements in addition to all these building blocks is on one side the glossary, which is a kind of common vocabulary for producing the documentation in the support center. And then the conceptual model, which is a model that put in place all the concepts around a data space, and also the relationships about, amongst the different elements of a data space. The blueprint will be continuously evolving. The first version is expected by the end of September, the 0.5, and the full final version, complete version, will be at the end of March, in April next year, more or less. So the green elements will be all of them included in this first version by the end of September, and some complementary versions of the standards, implementations, and documentation will be provided as well in April next year. So which has been the approach? So we originally took the building block model provided by the OpenDI project, which was also already included in the starter kit document, which was the first document that we produced by the end of last year from the project. And on top of this, we positioned more clearly the business, the governance, and the legal aspects that were not too much developed in the OpenDI proposal. Then we also collected input from the community, and then we updated this collection of building blocks with inputs from existing projects and initiatives, like, for example, the technical convergence document of the Data Space Business Alliance that has been considered as a reference in the elaboration of this proposed taxonomy. So after this discussion, after this collection of inputs, we came up with this proposal of taxonomy for building blocks. It's divided in two main pillars, the governance and the technical building blocks. In the governance, the governance pillar has been the one much more developed with regards to the OpenDI proposal, and it has been also split into the three main sub-pillars, which could be business-related aspects, governance itself-related aspects, and legal frameworks. It's still under development, but this can give you an idea about more or less what they are doing in that regard. But today, the focus is on the technical aspects. So here you can see also the pillar of the technical building blocks, which is pretty much similar to the one provided by the OpenDI framework. But we have slightly changed some classification and some namings in the building blocks. But in essence, they are bringing more or less the same functionality that was described in the OpenDI. But we are now here elaborating more in detail which are the functional and the technical specifications for each of the building blocks. So apart from the building blocks, the Data Space Supercenter is also proposing three essential services that should accompany this collection of building blocks in the deployment of a data space. On one side, we have this registry of credentials and identifications that would be required in order to uniquely identify the participants in a data space. Also a service for federation, which implies that we may have federated discovery of services, federated marketplaces, and so on. And finally, we are also bringing the concept of data space connector, which is a kind of suite of components that would be needed to be connected to a data space, and that you can easily deploy locally in order to deploy all the functionality that is required for you as a participant to connect to a data space. So these are additional services, are not building blocks, but are services that can be offered from a data space in order to connect and to deploy to a data space. So how to use the blueprint? The idea is that when possible, try to follow this proposed structure of building blocks in your data space. So it's easier for you because you don't have to reinvent the wheel and you can simply use what is already there. If not, you can also do the mapping between your building blocks and the ones that are proposed by the support center. And in this way to identify which are the missing elements or the incomplete functionalities. If these identify missing functionalities are specific for your domain, you can refer to the generic support center building block and then extend this building block with this functionality for your domain. And if you think that this functionality is relevant for other domains, you can contact the support center and to propose an additional functionality and modification of a building block or even an addition of a new building block. It's important to keep updated about the future releases of the blueprint. As I said, it will be evolving, so it's important to keep updated. And when available, you can also propose implementations of the building blocks that are specified by the support center, as we will be keeping a kind of inventory of reference implementations, so you can be validated as a building block implementation, and then you can be part of this repository in the future. So this is an upcoming possibility. So in the blueprint, I have mentioned that there exists also a collection of standards that will be there in order to build the technical specifications. So we have also created then this asset, which is basically this collection of de facto and de jure standards and reference implementations that are being used for the technical specifications of the building blocks as candidates. In these versions, they are in the version that will be published in September. You will see how some of the technical specifications of the building blocks are suggesting or are including some candidate standards or implementations to be used as a reference for this building block. We have structured this collection according to the categories and to the building blocks that we have mentioned in the taxonomy. And we have one online spreadsheet for internal management of these standards, and also a dedicated space in the data space support platform for sharing with the community. This collection are used from different users. For example, for the data spaces initiatives can be used in order to consult which are the cross-domain standards that are most adopted by other data spaces. And they can also endorse some of these standards that they plan to use or they are already using. In general, the European Commission can also use this for proposing, for identifying gaps in the standards, and then to propose new standardization requests, and the community in general for consult which are the most commonly adopted standards in regards to data spaces. So here, just an example of how looks like the collection, the internal spreadsheet, and also the space in the support platform, which is only available for now for registered users in the platform. Any of you can get access to this platform, but it will be openly public in the website by the end of September, together with the blueprint. This exercise, again, I would like to insist of, has been co-created with the data spaces, and is open to any data space to contribute and to provide inputs to this collection. So we did also some analysis of this collection, which currently includes more than 120 standards already from different typology. And we have realized that the most covered standard, the most covered category is the data sovereignty and trust and the data interoperability. And as I said, we are collecting standards from different nature, from bodies like W3C, ETSI, or OASIS, but also from consortiums like Athena-X, also specifications from the European Commission, and also industrial bodies like Gaia-X or IDSA. So you can see in the collection standards and specifications coming from different sources. So how to use these standards, this collection of standards? So you can check which are the proposed standards, and you can identify which are useful for your domain. And of course, you can endorse, if you like, some of these standards. But you can also propose additional standards to be used in the specifications of the different data space components, either for all domains or specific for your domain, because we are keeping separated those standards that are applicable for any domain from those ones that are specifically for a domain. And of course, you can be informed later on about recommended standards in order to foster interoperability by the future versions of the blueprint. So far, there is no any recommendation for the moment. It's just a collection of candidates standards. So I would like also to point out about the glossary. I mentioned before that we need to set up a common vocabulary across the different data spaces, or at least for the support center, for all the support center communications and publications, we need to decide a common vocabulary in order to avoid any misunderstanding and any misleading communications. And then we are creating this glossary in co-development also with the data spaces. So it's a collection of terms ordered alphabetically or per category, in which you can find the different terms we are using in the support center, along with the criterion and a definition, because we know that the same term can have different meanings in the different contexts, and that's why we are not enforcing to anyone to change their language or to use our glossary. But it's important to see the correspondence between the terminology in a context and the terminology proposed in the DSSC glossary. As much as possible, we are adopting terminology from the European legislation and also from international standards. And we are now working on the version 2.0. The first one is already available in the website since the end of last year. But now here you have the link to the working document, so you can even propose terms or definitions and make comments on the existing definitions, as it is an open document for everyone. Sorry, how to use then the glossary. So when you are thinking in using a term, we recommend to check the DSSC glossary and try to use it in a meaningful way. If you are using your own terminology, try to find the correspondence with the glossary, looking at the definition that we are proposing. And if you disagree with some definition or would you like to propose any other input, you have just to go to the working document and to propose directly there. And the last element that I would like to comment on is on the conceptual model, which is this model that I mentioned before, that is putting in relation the different concepts of a data space. And here I would like to make a distinction between the other models that we are working on, as well as the architectural model. So in the case of the conceptual model, what we are trying is to organize the fundamental concepts and terms associated to a data space, using the vocabulary that we have defined in the glossary, in order to ensure that we are communicating properly and in a consistent way all the time. We are categorizing these terms and we are trying to reduce the ambiguity that we may have in discussing data spaces with different participants and different data spaces. On the other hand, the version of the conceptual model will be delivered with a blueprint now at the end of September. But we are also working in parallel in the architectural model, which will be delivered later ahead, not in this version of the blueprint, in which we are tackling other structural and organizational aspects of data spaces. This architectural model is a kind of high-level representation of the components, what we call building blocks in the blueprint, and how they interact and they can work together in a deployment. It includes conceptual design, principles, patterns, typically used in software engineering development. And this architectural model allows to the participants in the data space to grasp the overall structure and behavior of the data space. So in this way, they can make a more efficient planning and deployment of the data space. So coming back to the conceptual model, the idea of this approach is to improve or to gain clarity and consistency in the usage of different concepts in a data space. As it has been built in a modular way, it can be scaled and extend in the future in case that we identify new concepts. The idea is to reach interoperability if all of us we are using the same conceptual model, and also it's a benefit for our documentation and creating a common understanding for everyone that is reading the Support Center documentation. So then the purpose of the conceptual model is twofold. On one side, to provide a well-defined language with precise concepts and terms in order to express what we want to express in an understandable way. And also to provide a high-level view of what a data space is, in order to highlight which are the basic components and being able to put together all the elements in a data space in a common picture. So we have structured the conceptual model in 3 different levels. In the level 0, we are defining the concepts and the relationships that are needed in order to define the ecosystem of the data space. So which are the basic interactions which is the ecosystem around the data space, and the federation concept can be also incorporated here in this level. In the level 1, we are defining the main concepts of the data spaces. This includes concepts like products, transactions, governance, and so on. And the level 2 is a more granular view on the level 1, with more detailed view on the concepts like data policies, the role model, and so on. So how can you use the conceptual model? Well, we recommend that you ensure that your vocabulary and descriptions are coherent with this conceptual model, with this proposal. Check if your building blocks, how they are described and how they are implemented, are compatible with this model, and also that your blueprint is consistent across your building blocks according to this model. So it's basically kind of assessment that we are using same concepts and same relationships. So if you want to keep posted about any evolution of these technical assets that the support center is bringing to you, you can follow on one side the news and the publications in the website of the project, and you can request for any kind of support, technical or general support through this link. And I would also recommend you to, if you are interested in the technical aspects of the data space, to join the technology thematic group, which is meeting more or less every month. And they have a dedicated space in the support platform of the support center. So you can be involved following also this link I leave here. And also we have monthly Insight series webinars. The next one will be on the 5th of October and will be exactly focused on the blueprint, as it will be delivered by the end of the month. The first webinar after this delivery will be fully dedicated to the blueprint and how to use it. So I think it's all from my side. I hope that I keep myself in time. I think not, but if you have any question, I will be glad to answer later. Thank you.
Many thanks, Clara. Don't worry, I think we are still on time. Timo, I think it's time for you to present the DSSC side, DS4SSC side. Thank you.
Right. Hello, everyone. Can you see my screen properly?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, there's 50 people here and we only have a very short time to talk. I have no idea of the profiles that are here in the group, so I hope this will not be too high level. I've looked for you on LinkedIn, some of you, to find out who's here, and I see mainly academia and people related to the data space movement. So if I'm being too high level, please use the Q&A features in Zoom. Since we have very little time for the Q&A afterwards, make sure that you ask the questions you want to ask. Yeah, my name is Timo. I'm a computer scientist in Belgium working for the digital agency of the city of Ghent. I'm also a long-time proponent of open data at Open Knowledge Belgium. I'm a consultant on the DS4SSC project and very heavily involved with OASC and their work also on digital twinning. So I will try to thank you very much, Clara, for the very clear explanation of the DSSC. I will try to take the concepts you presented and zoom in a little bit on the DS4SSC, so the data space for smart sustainable cities and communities specifically. So let me see if I can get to the next slides. Yeah, first of all, might be interesting for those that don't know, position this project again. Sophie did it already at the start. But to give an idea, this is a slide I like lots to really position how DS4SSC is aligned with all the other data spaces, is that you could say that each of the data space domains are verticals. So Europe is funding data spaces within each of these domains, health, manufacturing, skills. I don't need to explain to you. But as a civil servant, we get in touch with all of these. So, I mean, if you're doing urban planning, if you're trying to change the modal shift within your cities, if you try to increase tourism, energy efficiency, you will at some point be confronted with the dependency on other data spaces. So typically the data space for smart sustainable cities and communities will be a large integration exercise over different domains. And very importantly, will always have a geographical component. So because you're working pretty much, well, almost always working pretty much on the ground on what needs to be done in the city. As opposed to that, you have Destination Earth, which is basically using remote sensing to battle climate change. You could say that is heaven, while DS4 SSCC, colloquially speaking, is hell, you know, really organizing the integration of all these different services within city borders or communities. So what I wanted to introduce quickly, I don't know if all of you are familiar with this, so I really just wanted to go through it once again quickly. What are the minimal interoperability mechanisms that that Sophie already quickly presented at the start? I took the liberty to steal some of your slides, Sophie. So I just wanted to introduce that interoperability mechanisms are there because they're required, because we do not live in a perfect world where we can easily exchange data within implementations and different providers and so forth. This will also never be the case. We will never be able to standardize fully every different provider. I mean, there are commercial interests, there are domain specific things that you cannot standardize. So we live in a very messy reality. But that does not mean that we cannot integrate, you know. So that does especially not mean that you should invest large amounts of rehauling your entire IT infrastructure and able to be able to comply with a specific standard or to be able to connect with another vendor. No, there is always a very, in my opinion, quite high level of minimal interoperability that is possible with very small changes or by doing very small actions. So the MIMs are, they have a value proposition towards many stakeholders, but basically they are a common list of standards and technical specifications within specific domains. Each MIM is one of these domains, and they provide key enablers, let's say mechanisms on how to move between these technical specifications. There will also, we're working on this, there will be a common marketplace for integration tools, let's say mappers, transformers, this kind of stuff, in order to move from one specification to another. The MIMs are being developed within the Living in EU context, while the MIM Plus at least are. There is no commercial interest behind them. They are really just there to increase the efficiency for cities and communities, to enable innovation consortia, businesses, and policymakers to work more efficiently. So this is an overview of all of the MIMs currently being managed. You'll see that they are subdivided into different categories. There's the interaction category, which is basically about data models and exchanges. Integrity is everything that you need really to build trusted relationships within a data space. And impact is how these MIMs can be useful for actually changing things on the ground. We have to be fair and state that MIMs 1 through 4, actually MIM 5 should be in dark blue here as well, are being developed or are very well developed, and the others still need quite a lot of work. But anyone is welcome to join the working groups and develop these MIMs further. So Sophie already mentioned quickly, how are they governed? MIMs Plus, these are the European variants. They are managed by Living in EU. The technical subgroup of Living in EU. There are the global MIMs, which are being managed by the Council of Cities of OASC, and there is an international standard being put forward to the ITU, not to standardize each individual MIM, but to standardize the format of a MIM, so that we all agree what it really is, a minimal interoperability mechanism. So the core principles of a MIM are that we want a basic set of requirements that are easy to implement, so no complicated translation rules, mapping, and so forth, just the things that you need to enable as good as possible interoperability. And this can be very small things. A stupid example, changing the column headers of an Excel in some cases can provide minimal interoperability. So don't see this as a very heavy set of requirements. They're very lightweight and very principled. YMIM, the standard as mentioned, being put forward by the ITU, is just a way to describe a MIM so that we each understand the same thing. Basically, they start with an objective. For MIM 1, this is context management. The objective would be to be able to exchange context information between different brokers or data spaces. And then we'll drill down to what does this really mean in terms of the capabilities for systems, the requirements of these systems, which specifications really adhere to these requirements, and then which mechanisms can we use to implement them. And there will be in the future, right now it's not the case, there will be conformance and compliance testing for each and all of the MIMs. Just looking at the time here. Yeah, we'll hurry up. This is a simple example of how MIM1 is structured in, according to the YMIM format. So the capabilities are listed here. There are only 3. They are very high level. And these imply a little bit more detailed requirements, but still people that are familiar with standardization will directly see that these are very high level requirements. They're not very detailed at all. Then for each of these requirements, we can define a mechanism on how to implement them. For instance, this is the example of NGS-ILD. NGS-ILD is a standard developed and managed by Fireware. And how this standard, together with its implementation in a context broker, really adheres to all of these requirements. I'm not going to go through them one by one. It's just to try to make it a little bit more clear how these MIMs are actually structured. Okay. Then I want to zoom in on the building blocks. Clara already mentioned. DSSC identified a lot of building blocks. The DS4 SSCC project, yeah, sorry about all the abbreviations, but this is so DS4 SSCC has worked on these building blocks and produced some more or some raffination. So I really don't need to reiterate on this. We're now on technical common ground, so we're only looking at the technology-based building blocks, which are subdivided in these 9 categories. We have compiled also on our website the inventory for DS4 SSCC of all the specifications that and the building blocks that can be relevant for sustainable communities and citizen communities. So if you're working within a city or a community, please have a look at this. This is based both on, of course, the information that was developed by the DSSC, but also an extra in-depth analysis of over 100 smart city projects. We had a survey for policymakers and local authorities, and a whole bunch of in-depth interviews, of which Clara, and not in the least, did quite a few. And we came to building blocks, and these building blocks can be categorized within these 3 categories. They are either standards, they are specifications, or they're reference implementations. Just to make clear that not everything is just a building block. I mean, a standard is only a standard when it is recognized by one of the recognized standardization organizations, just like ISO, ITU, W3C, and so forth. A specification is an industry standard. It's something that a vendor or a group of vendors defines on their own. It's not necessarily governed by a standardization body. And reference implementation is just there. I mean, we really need to make a differentiation between a data format, a standard, a specification, and a piece of software. So all of these are integrated within the inventory, but we really make the differentiation between them. Some just to drill down a little bit to the real technology level, because I think there are quite some technologists right here. Within smart cities and communities, we identified some commonly used technologies. So this is some of the work we did within the project. I will go through a few of them. There's not at all to endorse them. It's just to sketch the lay of the land and to get a more concrete insight of how cities are organized right now and what it means for the structure of the data space. First big category, we identified 3 categories that are really important. Geographic tools, like I said at the start, cities and communities are mainly managing land, right? So obviously the people, but people are living on land. So geography, GIS is still a core activity of any city or community's management. These are the tools that are commonly used. I think ESRI is mostly used within cities, but there are open source alternatives like QGIS. Some smaller communities might even use web-based GIS, like Google Maps. And often cities are also relying on remote sensing, so LiDAR, satellite data, aerial photography, these kind of things to get an insight into the actual state of their geographic territory. Then GPS and GNSS are positioning systems. I have something to say about this on the next slide. Obviously, we as developers are mostly relying on GPS. This is an American standard. There is a better European alternative within the Galileo Copernicus projects, which is much more detailed for European users. So please, if you're a developer and you're using GPS, consider at least using EGNSS. Then second, the largest vendor in Europe is Esri ArcGIS, which is an American solution. It provides cloud-based solutions as well. Be wary, always check data ownership and GDPR constraints. Data ownership, meaning that be sure that you don't have a contract in which you manage a lot of geographic data and then at the end are not able to export it, or God behold that it is being used or sold to other companies. Make sure that when you're using a GIS system, it is also capable of integrating with non-geographic data sources, because especially in terms of data spaces, we will be getting a lot of sensor data, which might be geocoded or not, but also statistical data that you want to be able to maintain in some common database or data source, data lake. Make sure tooling supports open standards. In the GIS world, this is mostly the case. Mostly open OGC standards are used. And by all means, use as many features as you can within the contract that you have with your vendor, but be aware of lock-in before, for example, Esri also provides a one-stop shop open data portal. If you want to set up an open data portal, obviously, this is very easy, but in turn, you will find that you cannot publish data sets that are not geographic or not contained within ArcGIS itself. So use the features, but be very scrupulous about which ones you want to use. I hurry up a little bit. What we also see is the evolution of local digital twins. Many cities are making them. I include two often used standards for the presentation of digital twins. CityGML is a 3D city model standard that is very widely used. It also contains semantic data, so you can really say this feature is this type of thing. This is a tree, this is a car, but it's not as performant as the next one. This is GLTF. Is an open file format which can be used to render digital twins, but it's much more optimized for 3D applications in VR. Obviously, people that work in urban planning departments will also know the CAD tools, which are typical urban planning tools. Now, why are these special for cities, these tools? Because cities are traditionally very large in comparison to other 3D modeling tools. Most 3D modeling tools, 3D Studio Max, you only model one object. If you have to model and maintain an entire city, that's quite a difference in scale and a difference in software you need to use. Also here, if you're developing a digital twin, you have 3D models, make sure that the assets can be annotated, so you can still find the type of assets that is included, or that you can basically spot on the map. Again, CityGML is very good at this. GLTF is slightly less good. Make sure you can easily import from 3D modeling tools, and that if you're using point data, so LiDAR data, if you do scanning of 3D objects, it can take extensive computing power to include this kind of data in 3D models. So you need to be aware of that. And then last, but certainly not least, some industry standards for sensor data management. We're talking data spaces, we're talking real-time data here. I think within the smart city context, NGS-ILD is widely adopted and very well known. It's a standard for real-time data, which also allows you to semantically annotate the kinds of measurements you're making. Linked data event streams is an upcoming standard, which is fully based on event streams. So it's basically just logging the changes within a data set and not the data set in a whole. It is very useful because it's very concise and still has the full power of the semantic web behind it. So it's fully linked data. And then MQTT or Mosquito is, let's say, the industry standard for IoT solutions. It's very lightweight. It's a classic publish subscribe messaging protocol that you will have to use together with pieces of software that can store this data, a message queue, to be more precise. These are some of the tools that we are using, also related to the NGS ILD ecosystem, is the Orion Context Broker. It's a context broker tool where you can basically list and discover new sensors. Kafka is the industry standard for distributed event streaming platforms. And Apache NiFi is a very, very useful tool that will allow you to integrate different data sources with different formats that are providing data in real time. All right, this is my last slide. I didn't see the clock, so I hope we still have some time.
Well, I just wanted to step in and say, like, Timo, I think we need to but I did post in the meantime in the chat that to urge people to share their questions already. But no one has shared any questions so far. So maybe if you have any, it's time to unmute yourself. Okay, so maybe there are no questions and everyone was so clear or so confusing that people are speechless. Ah, there is one. So Thomas Royko in the chat asked a question, but you can unmute yourself, Thomas, if you want, or I can just read it. Did you analyze how the interoperability of the presented standards can be realized, data broker? Timo?
We didn't analyze it for each of the standards, no. Unfortunately, this is ongoing work. If you're saying data broker, this is work that's being done within the MIM1 working group. So because the MIM1 is about context. I see Clara has something far more interesting to say probably.
Oh, yes, just to mention that now here talking on behalf of FIWARE, at least in the interoperability between NGS ILD and LDS that has been already mentioned. We are well developing or exploring how to make them work together, and we are developing some extensions in order to address LDs together with NGS ILD. So just as a note. So yes, the answer is that in some cases, yes, we analyzed how some of these standards can work together, and in the concrete case of NGS ILD and LDS, we are working on that.
Okay, then Kazik Anhalt asked which Smart Sustainable Citizen Committees projects we are aiming at particularly. I don't think there is a priority, but correct me if I'm wrong. All domains are, I mean, the whole idea is that they have to be cross-domain. So all use cases that are cross-domain are relevant. Anyone has something to add here? Okay.
I don't know. To me, it's difficult to give only one example where the standards have been already applied. So, of course, there are examples where some of the standards in both in the support center collection and the data space for smart cities and communities collection has been already applied, but it's difficult to find. So perhaps in some of the use cases that we have analyzed in the context of the data space for smart cities and communities could be one good example for the application of the standards, but there are plenty of them. So I don't know, Timo, if you would highlight some of them or one of them. It's difficult to find.
Well, we are now answering the question of Kazik, right? In DS4SSCC, we've researched about 100 smart city projects. So we selected, in the end, we only selected 4 or 5, and we basically went in depth with those because we wanted to have a great degree of diversity. So yeah, there was a very detailed selection criteria and so forth. So I can provide you with the list and the selection criteria and the results if you're interested. No problem.
Yeah, I see also some question in relation to Gaia X. So I don't know if the question is for support center or for data space for smart cities and communities. But yes, definitely, at least in the collection of the support center, of the collection in the collection of standards of the support center, I mentioned that one of the sources to gather reference and standards, it's coming from Gaia X, and in the collection you can see verifiable credentials or the trust framework from Gaia X already mentioned in the collection. So it's taken into consideration, especially for what has to do with the trust mechanisms for the data space.
Okay. Any Thomas Rykov comments? Have you guys covered it in the meantime?
Just quickly, Thomas, we did research Helsinki. It's one of the use cases, well, smart city projects that we researched in depth. Rotterdam, we did research, but not as in depth as Helsinki. And then we had Valencia, the region of Flanders, and Slovenia.
Then we have maybe we can take a couple of more minutes to answer 2 more questions. So we have George Siviras asking about data models and vocabularies and the RDF of Gaia X and the International Data Spaces Information Model, RDF, which are going to be the standard. Okay,
Yeah, that's something I cannot answer.
Sorry, I cannot see this question.
It's in the Q&A part.
No, sorry. I was looking at the chat.
All slides will be shared just in the meantime.
So could you repeat the question, because I cannot see the Q&A?
About data models and vocabularies and the RDF of Gaia X and the International Data Spaces Information Model, RDF, which are going to be the standard.
Well, as I said before, there has not been yet any kind of specific recommendation on any specific standard or specification to follow. So the exercise that has been done so far is to identify what is already there. And now in the definition of the different building blocks, they are using these candidates in order to define the specifications of these of the different building blocks, but there is no any specific recommendation about any specific standard so far in order to follow. This is a next step, and it's not yet decided to what extent we need to be prescriptive at the time to define a concrete standard to be used, or just simply to propose which are the possibilities out there.
Okay, and then we had one more question about the overlaps of information objects among different domains. How do we deal with those overlaps?
This is a follow-up question of some
Yes.
of Antonella's earlier questions, very to the point, by the way. Yes. So these overlaps within smart data models, there is quite some work being done to identify and fix these overlaps, but I would refer you to Alberto Albello from Flyweb.
All right.
Yes, of course. Any question about the smart data models, we can forward it to Alberto, and he can solve it kindly.
Thomas Rykov is addressing you, Timo, to please send him some of the things you mentioned.
I will, Thomas. Just send me your question by mail, and I will reply.
Perfect. Well, apologies about the really short Q&A session that we had today, but I believe you have the email address for everyone, and we will share the slides that also lists the email addresses of everyone. So should you have any questions, you can always contact us. And I would like to close now this meeting. I understand there is one more question about cross-domain. It means just having, for example, a tourism domain together with mobility, for example. So data from different domains combined. So thank you very much for attending and joining us today online. In case you have any questions, please email us, and well, we will see you soon. And please don't forget that the preparatory action is coming to an end this month, which means that very soon you will be hearing from the DS4 DSSC deployment action. Goodbye.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.